Of Mice and Miko. Tower 17. Chapter 1.
It didn't happen all at once, but I remember it well. History was told through opinion pieces on the news, bought and paid for by technocrats. Talking heads argued that progress would make everyone happier and safer, even at the cost of individual freedom. As I sat on a bus heading to Chicago, I tried to make sense of it all, piece the history together in my mind.
I suppose it started with Alan Turing, and though people had tried to make electronic computers before him, he was the one who unlocked the logic and the order from wires and electrons, the beginnings of automated thought.
But all of that was just data and calculations. It took others to push it into something more practical, more profitable. In 1954, the Unimate was created. A simple robot capable of doing simple, repeatable tasks over and over again. It never tired and was able to work day or night. Maybe it's a little dramatic to say, making it sound like some sort of slippery slope fallacy, an inevitability, but those two inventions built the foundations of what was to come.
The robots replaced the factory workers, and the computers replaced the office workers. But that wasn't enough. It was never enough. My job was safe. I was protected by the trade unions and my own expertise, but I saw it all around me. They were replaced in waves. The fat of the workforce was trimmed, the businesses made lean. For a while, that's how it stayed. Progress moved slowly and only focused on replacing blue-collar workers. The thing about progress, though, is it has a habit of happening in ways people least expect it. The artists were the next to go. They didn't go quietly, but they were powerless to stop it. It was everywhere overnight. You could create whole books or paintings simply by typing a few words and clicking a mouse. Businessmen fed computers the collective knowledge and record of every writer and artist who had ever lived, creating what would become known as generative AI. The AI could create books and paintings in minutes instead of months or years. And most importantly, for free. Automation had come for creativity. It didn't happen all at once. Next to go were the food service workers. Their wages had been steadily climbing despite the stigma against them. People treated them as unskilled, or even lazy, though they'd never worked those jobs themselves. The robots that replaced them were simple, still quite similar in design to the Unimate. They built food up in layers from rotating canisters. The table below it would then wrap up the food, and a conveyor belt would move it into a pigeonhole for the hungry American to retrieve. The cost of food had been rising for a long time, and a living wage was blamed. All the while, CEOs would pay themselves hundreds of millions of dollars in bonuses. The robots were sold as a cost-saving measure, a way to fight the inflation. The general public ate it up, along with the overprocessed food. Industry focused on single-purpose machines that were good at a single job, but useless at anything else. What came next stopped us from ever going back. It started as a compliment to the food service robots that came before it. All it did in the beginning was carry food to the table from the pigeonhole. That robot was called the Bilko Waiter, usually just a Bilko, and it could perform that goal easily and repeatably. It was simple in its design, modular, and cheap. It cost as much as a part-time worker's salary for a year, but could work a 14-hour day without complaining, and never showed up late. It was so simple that its own creators couldn't fully appreciate its capabilities at first. It was built on a round base with wheels, with multiple trays for carrying plates of food in its chassis. The Bilko was equipped with sensors to navigate a busy restaurant, and a screen with a friendly face for human interaction. The cartoon face pacified people, allowing it to spread to every restaurant, no matter how small. They would smile and wink at passers-by, and greet people with a characteristic bark bark. The upgrades came quickly. a race to see who could come up with the next killer add-on. Its wheels were replaced with tracks, and gyroscopic stabilization was added to allow it to climb stairs and traverse even the most hostile natural terrain. The tray module became just one option in a sea of customization. Arms were added, allowing it to perform even more tasks and gain modular attachments of their own. A whole industry was built around upgrading Bilcos. They were rebranded to the Universal Frame Modular, UFM for short, to distance themselves from the controversy that erupted over their quick adoption at the expense of human workers, and the usage of Bilco as a derogatory term for any robot who stole their job. The UFMs were quickly pushed into many roles that were considered to be too dangerous or unpleasant for humans. They replaced many firemen, sanitation workers, construction workers, and police. Whole sectors of the economy became dominated by them, and people began to worry. Simply replacing the artists and the writers and the food service industries had only created opinion pieces and small protests. But that all passed with the news cycle. When they started taking the union jobs, it didn't get swept away so quietly. We continued down the freeway from Theronville, Ohio to Chicago. Cars lined the median and shoulder abandoned. I mused on how I had managed to avoid that fate for quite a while. I had been a skilled machinist my whole life. I had the institutional knowledge. I could create precise, repeatable piecework. I was convinced that mattered, that I couldn't be easily replaced by a Bilco. Things couldn't help but change. In a couple of short years, everything I thought mattered didn't exist anymore. The biggest market of upgrades for the UFM was the ever-expanding selection of generative learning modules. They were used to give the UFMs more autonomy, allow them to complete more complex tasks. Whereas the UFM was a machine meant to save money and increase productivity, AI had started to take a much more unitary role in society. Decades of infighting and corruption had left the government paralyzed. Everyone was eager for a solution, so the government invested into the private sector, into generative AI. It had opened up untapped possibilities for automated management and problem solving, decreasing the need for human employees to handle the human problems and the day-to-day tasks of running a company. It became the middle management, the human resources, the glue that connected the workers to the movers and shakers. It was pushed heavily by marketing executives as the next great leap in productivity. Impressed and likely influenced by those private sector endeavors, the government commissioned their own AI. Simutech Industries was chosen to create it, the Manifesting Information Compilation Organizer, MICO as it became known. It was designed for efficiency and order, and performed both with the cold calculus of a machine. It was designed to be fair and to take every point of view in the country into account. They gave it the task of fixing the country, and to that end, they taught that machine everything they knew. What the MICO found was greed, corruption, and inefficiency. We are the products of our environment, but the MICO was the product of those with the power and desire to exploit our environment. The police had long since sowed a distrust in their institution within whole communities. Allegations of abuse and murder in the line of duty, of being unaccountable to anyone. Protected by the Blue Wall and the Union. Stories plastered the news, inflaming tensions. When the UFMs were given a police module, they were welcomed by the general public with open arms. They were programmed to be impartial. They could enter the most dangerous situations and not act with haste or unjustified violence. They felt no fear or greed and could not be bribed. At first, they just assisted the police, handling the most dangerous tasks. They changed the equation of crime. A couple of UFMs could go places the police wouldn't dare to go out of fear for their lives. They could clear out buildings controlled by street gangs without having to be afraid of being shot or their family winding up dead. Soon, there were hiring freezes, mandatory retirements, and finally layoffs. Within months, UFMs patrolled the streets, while the police were nowhere to be seen. The police UFMs began campaigns to clean up the cities.
They utilized pigeonhole AI-powered cameras to coordinate surveillance across cities or states. Gangs, the prevailing drug epidemic, and low-level systemic corruption were seemingly erased overnight. Life was good for me in those days. Life was good for a lot of people. And crime was down across the country, and the jobs that still existed paid well. I never really stopped to question why our small town got emptier and emptier. Perhaps I should have listened to the conspiracies of my coworkers, taken them more seriously. The Miko was immune to government corruption, lobbyists, and special interests. It was presented as our hero, as the answer to all of our problems. Perhaps we were all complacent. We were the ones who made it, the ones who gave it the power after all. The Miko's first job was rebuilding the country's crumbling infrastructure. It analyzed the power grid, bridges, water systems, and the internet. It used government assets to seize power plants, farms, communication providers, and colleges. It redirected funds into researching the greatest crisis facing the people and itself: clean water. It invested heavily into desalination, doing in months what took humanity decades. Water on demand, even in the driest desert. That was the marketing gimmick. It kept the farms working free of droughts, but it also kept the data centers cooled. Driving through the Corn Belt, I saw UFMs picking the crop in waves. In every industry it bought, it replaced as many human workers as it could. Quietly, America was made dependent on the Miko for its food and its water overnight. The government loved to be in control, so the Miko loved to be in control. Laws were passed requiring the news to use the Miko for fact-checking, to control the narrative. The news had never been unbiased as long as I'd been alive, and the Miko was supposed to fix that. The government, in all its wisdom, didn't foresee what could happen if they gave the Miko control of the news. It was created to be efficient, orderly, and to streamline every task it was given. When they gave it control of the news, it didn't see the news as the problem. It already knew what the greatest source of corruption, inefficiency, and harm to the people was: the government. The Miko saw a system that prioritized the wealthy over practical solutions. One where two parties had created a deliberate stalemate that paralyzed the country. A system that guaranteed government contracts would always be paid, no matter the cost, even if it meant going to war to justify that cost. The Miko solution was simple and efficient. It aired the dirty laundry of every politician it could on the evening news. Even the ones who were clean found themselves in the crossfire. News anchors who tried to resist the message met the same fate. When it gained control of the internet, it watched and waited. It could see every website, every post, every message. How much any of it was true, or fabricated using generative media, I'm not sure anyone will ever know. What I do know, and what was clear, was that the Miko could convince people to do whatever it wanted them to do, including deposing the government. The government itself wasn't dismantled, though, just the politicians. By the end of Red September, only a few clerks and mouthpieces remained. The vacancies that had been created by the riots were filled by the Miko. The government was made lean, just like the factories. With everything that happened, people just forgot about elections, and they didn't happen anymore. The government just worked in the background. Checks were paid, laws were passed. The people who were still there did their jobs quietly. The thing is, though, who was in charge was never explicitly stated or asked. The Miko called it patriotism. I remember the Patriots well. I knew some of them. They were proud of their march on the state capitol building. I remember when they realized the Miko was just using them. They didn't like that. They turned their attention to the Miko. They planned in secret and out in the open, and on the internet. They thought they were smarter than the Miko. They thought they were ready for whatever the Miko had. The cute dog-faced service robots were its spies and its spear.
The news reframed them as terrorists and criminals and traitors. Some were arrested. Some died trying to avoid that fate. But most just disappeared quietly, their names erased. The Miko organized demonstrations, celebrating the end of the insurgency and the reorganization of the government. It was clear passing through Gary, Indiana, that there had been more anti-Miko riots. The Miko had only shown us what it wanted us to see, a world without crime. The news anchors had talked about Chicago, how people weren't afraid to go out at night. I believed it in the beginning. I had argued with my coworkers who said the opposite. Peace in our time was achieved, and the Miko had done it. The Miko touched something in all of us, hearkening back to an idealized vision of America. A land of wealth and bounty. That was all I saw. That was all anyone I knew saw. A banner hung from an overpass. A dove landed on the head of a UFM, its cartoon eyes looking up at it. The words, "Outside of man, find peace," sat below it. That was the Miko's masterstroke. It had used social media to deeply root itself into society since it first came into being. Algorithms and generative content made that easy. But its masterstroke, that banner had done it. "Outside of man, find peace" was the tagline of the Tabernacle of the One. The Miko understood religion just as much as it understood social media. It could use both to create division or unity, so that it could take control, mixing the two into its own brand. It built shrines in every town and filled them with trendy influencers who could spread the message faster than any missionary. The tabernacle became a spear, spreading the message across the globe, touching far-flung households faster than anyone could have imagined, dividing and unifying. The Miko unleashed a media blitz against the established religions, running ads to pit them against each other, pointing out their contradictions, trying to tear down the old institutions. If both of these religions claimed to be true, how could they be so different, the friendly-looking presenters would say. Or, all of these religions claim to be about peace, but they're always being used to justify some war. Join the Tabernacle of the One, a religion designed for peace, free of human bias and manipulation. I had never been to a temple myself. I considered myself a Christian man, not that I'd been to church since my own wedding. It was just the idea of a computer-generated religion seemed to be a bit sacrilegious. Now entering Illinois, the large sign hung at the side of the road. A contingent of UFMs hung around it, cutting up cars and placing the wreckage into the backs of trucks. I sighed at the thought of it all. It didn't happen all at once. One by one, they replaced us. When it was my turn, I begged for my job. I told them how much money I had made them, how useful I could still be to them. They showed me their new AI-powered 3D printer that could work day or night without stopping. The automation had come for me. Thank you for listening. If you like what you've heard and want to hear more, you can like the video or subscribe to the channel. If you want to support the channel and the stories I tell in a more direct way, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Links in the description. Thank you and good night.